the courtroom fell silent, and for the first time in his life, Kody Brown looked truly afraid. Cold mornings were not anything out of the ordinary in Flagstaff, but this morning seemed different. It was as if the whole city was holding its breath. A thin layer of frost covered the steps of the courthouse, sparkling under the weak winter sun. The wind blew hard, pushing dust and dead leaves across the pavement, making every corner whisper with an uneasy energy. The journalists had gathered from every major network, cameras mounted, microphones in place, wires running everywhere like veins of electricity. Reporters stood ready, wrapped in thick coats, their breath fogging up the air as they rehearsed their lines. But they weren't here for just any celebrity case. They were here for Kody Brown, the once untouchable patriarch of the sister wives empire. For more than a decade, millions had watched his life unfold on television. His marriages, his separations, his arguments, his attempts to lead an enormous family, all broadcast like a never-ending drama. But today wasn't scripted. Today wasn't edited for TV. Today, Kody Brown was about to enter a courtroom where every decision would indeed be real. A black SUV had pulled up to the curb, the door opening slowly. And then he appeared. Kody stepped out, wearing a dark coat, his hair slightly unkempt, lines of stress deeply etched across his face. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't confident. He wasn't performing. He looked tired. He appeared uncertain. He looked human. Cameras exploded in flashes. Kody, is it true the documents came from inside your house? Do you blame your ex-wives? Are you ready for today's hearing? He continued to walk away, ignoring the questions, but his jaw tightened. His boots clicked sharply against the pavement as he climbed the steps. Behind him, several security guards created space, pushing the crowd back. The scene changed from chaotic to suffocatingly silent inside the courthouse lobby. Every footstep echoed on the marble floor. The air smelled of old wood and cold metal. Court officers nodded curtly at him, their signal of recognition of the man whose life had become entertainment for several years. He walked with long, tense strides, Robyn trailing behind him, her eyes red and swollen. She looked anxious, clutching a stack of documents tightly to her chest. She whispered something to him, but he didn't reply. He seemed lost inside his own thoughts. A thought he couldn't shake. How did my family get here? Inside the courtroom. When Kody pushed the wooden doors open, he entered a hall packed with onlookers, journalists, lawyers, and most painfully of all, his own family members. Christine sat on the left side, arms folded, expression unreadable. Janelle sat next to her, calm but distant. Meri stood farther back, her emotion held behind a stiff posture. Some of the older children were there too, whispering quietly among themselves. But the most striking part? None of them sat with Kody. Not one chair next to him was taken by his family, except Robyn. The emptiness around him seemed colder than the winter outside. As he sat at the defense table, he scanned the room, hopeful for at least a small sign of unity. A nod, a smile, a reassuring look. But he got nothing. The judge came in. Everybody stood up. All be seated. And the room fell silent, the silence thick as though someone had sealed the air inside. This wasn't a divorce case. This wasn't a custody hearing. This wasn't about filming disagreements for a TV show. This was about a betrayal that had ripped open the inner workings of the Brown family, laying bare private documents, financial disputes, personal communications, and confidential agreements leaked online. The leak of information sparked investigations, damaged reputations, and brought the family's image crashing down. And now the court wanted to know who had done it. The prosecutor, in opening, was the first to speak. "Your Honor, these leaked documents have caused enormous public confusion, possible financial damage, and personal harm against Mr. Brown." She placed several envelopes on the judge's desk. "These are files that came from someone with intimate access to the Brown family private life, somebody inside their home." The judge turned to Kody. "Mr. Brown, do you know the origin of these leaks?" Kody swallowed hard. His throat was dry. "No, Your Honor," he said, his voice low but steady. "But I know it wasn't an outsider." The whispering in the courtroom grew louder, with a security officer asking everybody to pipe down. The judge leaned forward, studying him. "Mr. Brown, it has been said that there were family disagreements before these leaks. Is this true?" Kody hesitated, looking at his wives. "Conflicts? Yes. Many." Christine looked away. Janelle let out a deep sigh. Meri pressed her lips into a thin line. Robyn shook her head, trying not to cry. For the first time, Kody realized just how fractured his family looked from the outside. They weren't one unit anymore. They were not the strong, plural family he once proudly showed on TV. They were splintered, broken, separated by pain and secrets. The courtroom began to review the leaked documents. Pages displayed on a projector screen showed private text conversations, property division notes, legal agreements, bank details, arguments over territory, land, emotional messages never meant for the public. Some of the messages between Kody and his wives were harsh. Some were desperate. Some were full of regret. The onlookers remained astounded. Kody continued to look down into the table, as if he could not face the painful memories being exposed. His fingers wrapped around the edges of the desk, turning his knuckles white. The prosecutor spoke again. This level of detail could only have come from an insider. Someone who lived the experience. Someone who felt strongly enough to reveal everything. Kody's heart hammered in his chest. He knew this was true. Only family members had this information. But why would one of them turn on him? Anger boiled in his stomach, but so did fear. What if this betrayal wasn't about revenge? What if it was about pain he never saw, or never wanted to see? Then came the moment that changed everything. "Your Honor," said the prosecutor, "the source of the leak has come forward." A wave of shock rippled across the room. Kody's head snapped up. His wives exchanged tense glances. The older children bristled. A heavy wooden door opened, and the person who walked in made Kody's breath stop. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a journalist. It wasn't a hacker. It was one of his own children. The courtroom gasped. Robyn made a soft, fractured noise. Kody's face just drained of color. His child, holding his head high, but his eyes full of regret, walked towards the witness stand. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just a leak. This was a message coming from inside his own home, from someone raised under his rules, his leadership, his choices. A person who had lived through emotional storms behind closed doors. Someone who wished to make the truth obvious. Kody felt something heavy crush his chest as they sat down. This wasn't a court case anymore. This was to be the start of a reckoning he never expected. The courtroom sat frozen, waiting for the next words. Kody stared at his child, eyes full of confusion, anger, fear, and something even deeper. Guilt. Something in him whispered the truth he had been ignoring since ages. Maybe the problem wasn't just the leak. Maybe the problem was with me. The judge leaned forward. "State your name and describe your involvement." And as Kody's child opened their mouth to speak, the air in the courtroom grew electric. The truth was finally coming, and nothing in the Brown family would ever be the same again. The courtroom had now become a silent battleground. Every heartbeat felt like an echo against the cold wooden walls as Kody Brown's child sat on the witness stand, about to reveal the truth that had shaken the entire Brown family to its core. But before the first word was spoken, the judge raised a hand. "We will start with the background," she said. And slowly, painfully, the story of how the Brown family, shattered from inside, began to unfold, not only for the courtroom, but for the world. The Browns had been living with tension for years that the outside world didn't fully understand. Yes, arguments were captured by cameras. Yes, viewers witnessed jealousy. The drama was felt, yes. But what they never saw was the slow decline of unity, the emotional distance that grew like a silent storm. Every move brought more stress. With every new house came more division. Every marriage faced a different kind of pressure. Flagstaff was supposed to be a new beginning. Instead, it was the place where everything fell apart. Late-night arguments, silent dinners. Children feel torn between adults' battles. Wives who feel unseen, unheard, and unloved. And over it all stood Kody, trying to be the leader while losing control of the very family he once had thought he could hold together. One by one, the building blocks of the Brown legacy crumbled. Christine said she couldn't do it anymore and left. Janelle remained steadfast, yet emotionally distant. Meri retreated into herself, longing for a life in which she wasn't forgotten. Robyn clung to hope, desperately trying to keep something alive that had already died. There was no unity, no team, no shared vision, just broken hearts living under the same name. Months prior to the courtroom showdown, something big happened. Rumors started to spread online, anonymous posts, private information, precise financial figures, screenshots of agreements which were never shown on TV. It was the first indication that someone inside the family had leaked sensitive data. At first, Kody refused to believe it. "It's fake," he said. "It's edited. It's taken out of context." But when investigators traced the files, the truth hit him like a punch to the gut. The documents were real, and someone close to him had exposed them. Not a stranger, not a hacker, not some jealous outsider, someone he trusted. But the betrayal cut deeper because the information isn't random. The files were organized, timed, chosen carefully to show a pattern. It wasn't an attack, it was a message, a cry for help. One last try to show the world just how broken things had become. The prosecutor clicked a small remote, and the projector illuminated the dark courtroom wall. Document after document surfaced. 1. Financial disputes, property values, bank transfers, land payments, savings split across different houses. The numbers told a silent story of stress, imbalance, and mistrust. 2. Private text messages, screenshots of emotional arguments, a wife begging for more attention, a child asking why the family was always fighting, Kody desperately trying to control multiple relationships in collapse. With every word, years of unresolved pain echoed. 3. Legal agreements, film shooting contracts, ownership disputes about property, internal agreements regarding children and money, documents never intended to see the light of day. 4. Personal journals, notes on loneliness, entries about feeling abandoned, private feelings written in quiet moments. They exposed what the show never captured: the emotional cost for being in a plural family under constant pressure. The courtroom wasn't just seeing evidence. They were witnessing the Brown family's heart bruised, exhausted, and bleeding. Now the judge turned to the witness in the box. Kody's child. "Why did you release those documents?" she asked softly. The room froze. Kody leaned forward, waiting, fearing, hoping for an answer that might make sense. The witness took a slow breath. "It wasn't to hurt him," they said softly. "It was to make him see." Kody's eyes grew wide. "See what?" asked the judge. "That the family was falling apart and nobody was listening." Whispers abounded in the courtroom. The witness added, "For years we lived in a home where adults were fighting, children were confused, and everybody acted as though everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. It hasn't been fine for quite some time." Their voice cracked slightly. "We grew up watching our mothers cry, watching our siblings struggle, watching Dad move from house to house, always overwhelmed, always stressed, always angry." They wiped their eyes. "No one ever stopped to ask us how we felt. Not once." The pain in their words shook the courtroom. Tears filled Christine's eyes. But not of shock. She had known something was broken long before the leak. Janelle nodded as if she heard every word. Meri looked down at her hands, remembering the loneliness that had haunted her for years. Robyn reached for a tissue, shaking. Kody sat still. Everything he was afraid of, everything he denied, everything he fought against, was right in front of him. It wasn't betrayal. This was the truth. And sometimes the truth feels brutal. The judge gave the witness free rein to talk. "We weren't trying to expose the family," they said. "We were trying to save it." "How?" asked the judge. "By forcing everyone to finally face the truth." Their eyes turned to Kody. "Dad, you always said we were a team, but over the years it became your team, not ours. Every decision was about protecting your control, not our happiness." Kody's lips tightened. His breathing became shallow. "You didn't see what was happening to us," the witness said. "Some felt unwanted. Some felt invisible. Some felt like you only cared about one house, one wife, one group of children." The courtroom responded immediately. Heads turned. Cameras clicked. "But worst of all," the witness whispered, "you stopped being a father who listened." Those words shot through Kody like arrows. He closed his eyes. He didn't want to admit it. But deep down, he knew parts of it were true. The judge leaned forward, voice steady. "Were you angry and then leaked the documents?" The witness shook their head. "It wasn't anger. It was desperation." "Explain." "For years, the adults spoke around us, about us, over us, but never with us. The show made it worse. Every argument became bigger. Every move created more stress. And every time someone complained, Dad said he was trying his best and that we didn't understand." The witness looked directly at Kody. "But we did understand. We were there. We lived it." Kody finally let tears escape his eyes, but quickly wiped them away. The judge nodded slowly. "And what were you expecting to happen?" The witness demurred. "I wanted Dad to stop, to look at us, to hear us, to realize that he wasn't losing a show. He was losing his family." The courtroom suddenly became very quiet. Even the journalists stopped writing. This wasn't about law anymore. This was about a family asking their father to see their pain, something reality TV never showed. Kody finally whispered, "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" The witness gave a smile of sadness. "We tried, so many times, but you were always too busy, too stressed, or too defensive to hear it." That sentence broke something inside him. You could see it. The exact moment Kody realized this wasn't a betrayal of trust. It was a consequence of years of emotional distance. The very family he thought he was protecting had been crying out for help, while he was too lost in chaos to hear them. I leaked the documents because the family was drowning, and nobody knew how to ask for help. Their voice quivered. We didn't want to destroy you, Dad. We wanted to save ourselves. And for the first time since the hearing started, Kody lowered his head, not in anger, not in frustration, but in acceptance. He finally comprehended. This wasn't about betrayal. It was about the truth. Painful truth, hidden truth. Truth buried beneath years of pressure, moving, filming, conflict, favoritism, and all broken expectations. The leak wasn't the explosion. It was the cry that came after years of silent suffering. And that truth, that raw, painful truth, would change everything about the Brown family forever. The courtroom, mere seconds ago filled with gasps and tittering murmurs, now was bathed under an ocean of thick silence. The testimony of Kody Brown's child still lingered in the air like smoke in the aftermath of an explosion. Impossible to just ignore, impossible to clear. All were waiting for Kody to speak, to say anything in response, to defend, to cry, to break. But he didn't. He sat there, frozen, like a statue carved out of shock and shame. His hands trembled, resting on the wooden table. His breath was shallow and uneven. The judge watched him with a steady, knowing look. She had presided over enough families to watch them crumble apart, parents who came in with scripted indignation, only to break down with hidden truths. But this was different. This was a man whose life had been broadcast to millions, yet the painful parts were never filmed. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Brown, do you have something to say? Kody swallowed hard. His throat was tight, as if every regret he had ever swallowed was now pushing its way back up. He slowly pushed his chair backward, the screech of wood cutting through the silence. The entire courtroom stiffened as he stood up. He didn't look like the assertive, confident father the world saw on TV. He didn't look like the man who always had answers, solutions, and explanations. He looked tired. He looked defeated. He looked human. He walked to the center of the courtroom, stopping only a few steps from the witness stand, close enough that he could see the trembling in his child's hands, a trembling he had never noticed before. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. I didn't know, he whispered. The court leaned in. I didn't know, he repeated, this time louder, though the words weren't stronger, only heavier. Turning to the judge, the struggle was written across his face. Your Honor, I thought I was doing what was best. I thought I was keeping the family strong. His voice shook like a glass about to shatter. But I see now that I was holding the family together only in my mind, not in reality. He paused, breathing slowly, each inhale a seeming battle. Maybe I kept moving us to new places because I thought a new beginning would fix everything, but all I did was drag old pain into new houses. A soft gasp came from one of the wives. Another dabbed her eyes with a tissue. He turned toward his wives, Christine, Janelle, Meri, and Robyn. He looked into each one's eyes, one by one. No anger, no excuses, only the weight of years of misunderstandings. I hurt all of you, he said in a quiet tone. I didn't mean to, but I did. His words were not dramatic, but raw, divested of all performance, even spoken with the tremble of a man losing something he never thought he could. Christine shifted in her seat. Of all the wives, she had been the one to leave first, the first to walk away from the chaos. She had endured years of feeling overlooked, undervalued, unseen. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the bench as she whispered, "You didn't listen, Kody. We tried to tell you." Janelle nodded silently beside her. Meri stared at the table, her expression unreadable, her eyes wet. Robyn, who sat next to Kody, looked torn between loyalty and heartbreak. The emotional dam had cracked. Everything that the wives, the children, the family had held inside for years was beginning to spill. The judge nodded for them to speak, if they wanted to. It was Christine who first came forward. "We begged you to slow down," she spoke in a soft but firm manner. "We begged you to see our pain. But you kept telling us we were exaggerating or complaining. You didn't want to hear the truth unless it fit your version of the story." Her words were gentle but honest, the kind of honesty that carries the sting of years buried beneath silence. Janelle added, "You didn't just stop listening. You stopped noticing." Meri whispered, "And you stopped loving us the way we needed." Robyn cried silently, her head nodding, caught between defending him and agreeing with the truth. Kody's breath caught. He wiped a tear away quickly, embarrassed but unable to stop the next one. "I know," he said. "I know I failed. I wanted to be the leader of this family. But I didn't realize the family needed a father, not a commander." The courtroom shifted emotionally. Some reporters looked stunned. Others scribbled desperately. But every single person felt the shift happening. This wasn't just a legal turning point. It was an emotional one. The prosecutor approached cautiously, sensing the intensity in the room. "Mr. Brown," she asked, "do you accept responsibility for the environment that led to the leak?" Kody didn't hesitate. "Yes." A shockwave ran through the room. "Do you think," she pressed on, "that the leak happened because your children felt unheard?" "Yes." "Do you believe you are responsible for this fracture in the family?" Kody closed his eyes, then opened them with a broken honesty. "More than anyone. Rarely, if ever, had such a public figure accepted so much blame so publicly." But Kody wasn't speaking as a celebrity anymore. He was speaking as a father, finally, who had seen consequences of years of denial. A complete turn of events nobody expected. The judge leaned back and watched the emotional unraveling. Her job wasn't to take sides, but she knew she was seeing something profound. She motioned again. "If there's anything that the wives or children would like to add that has meaning before I give the next ruling, you may speak." And then, unexpectedly, another of Kody's older children stood up. Their voice was trembling as they spoke. "Dad, we never wanted to hurt you. We just wanted you to stop hurting us." Those words pierced the room like lightning. Kody put his hand over his mouth, trying to choke the escaping sob. His body shook, his shoulders trembled. The man who once seemed indestructible was breaking openly in front of family, strangers, cameras, and the world. He whispered with tears, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The child who had spoken nodded slowly, not yet forgiving him, but accepting the apology. Christine wiped her tears. Janelle blinked hard. Meri looked down, conflicted. Robyn placed her hand on her face, crying quietly. The emotional storm was overwhelming, but healing always begins with the most difficult truths. The judge finally called for order and prepared to announce the next steps. But before speaking, she looked at every face in the room, each shadowed by pain, yet now somehow softened by something new. Possibility. "Mr. Brown," she said softly, "what I see here today is not a family beyond repair, but a family in need of structure, accountability, and healing." She turned to the court clerk. The court, by the evidence and emotional testimonies, presented orders. with a licensed family therapist experienced in plural family systems. Each adult, from wives to older children, must go to sessions to discuss any past grievances in a structured environment. All financial movements within the family must be monitored and reviewed quarterly. Monthly meetings where all family members can express their concerns without interruption. Because the judge recognizes the motive, here was emotional distress, not malice. Relief, shock, and emotion filled the reactions of the courtroom. It was not a punishment. It was a lifeline. A chance for the Brown family to rebuild, not as a polygamous empire or a reality show dynasty, but as human beings. As the session came to a close, Kody walked slowly toward his child, the one who had leaked the documents, the one who had forced this confrontation. There were no cameras allowed for this moment, no microphones, no direct quotes, but witnesses later described it as a father holding his child as if he was afraid of losing him again. Long overdue, the embrace that was needed, a hug that contained years of unspoken apologies. The wives watched, their faces a mix of sadness, relief, hope, and wounds. It wasn't the end of the family story. It wasn't the perfect resolution. But it was the beginning of something they hadn't felt in a long time: honesty. And honesty, painful as it was, had finally dragged the Brown family to a turning point they desperately needed. I want to hear from you in the comments. Is this the moment when Kody's entire empire comes crashing down?